Для торжественного
So, I think we're going to start, not to be too late behind the schedule. Our apologies because the morning sessions were so intensive, so we came later to the lunch. And that's the reason that some people will join us later after the lunch, hopefully. So, but nevertheless, we can start. Today we have an intention to talk about trade and trade-related topics. And of course, trade is a very important issue for BRICS cooperation. Everybody talks about trade, and trade goes before everything else, as I may say so. If you look into the textbooks on economic theory, trade is always treated first. So that's the way we do in our session. And just announcing the way we would discuss things, I suggest the following procedure. First, I give the floor to the speakers that are present here, presenting them one by one. But we will ask questions after everybody delivers her or his speeches. So those who want to ask a question, please be patient. You have to wait till the end of the session, and then all questions are allowed. We have microphones here, and you will be asked to, if you have a question, then you may ask it after the discussion. So I have the pleasure today first to introduce Andrei Spartak from Russia. He is a corresponding member of the Russian Academy of Sciences. He works, he's a head of the Department of International Trade and Foreign Trade of the Russian Federation in the Foreign Trade Academy. So the floor is yours, Andrei. You have to push the button on your left side, yes, and then everybody else would be listening.
Who will help me with the presentation? Huh? Who will help me with the presentation? You have the clicker? Должны были загрузить. Yes, yes. Да. Шпинкова подтвердила.
There's a moment
for
the presentation to be. No. Let's. We have time. People are still coming after lunch. A moment, and the presentation will be downloaded. Do you have a presentation, or do you need?
We send the presentation to the communications officer, Шпинковой, Яня. Господи, она написала, что получили.
А на флешке нету?
На флешке я не брал, мы просто получили подтверждение.
Okay, then probably we shall start like that, and then they will learn whether the presentation has arrived or not. Okay, let's begin.
Okay. I will touch upon more general questions of economic cooperation because I'm the first. We have many interesting topics in our trade and economic cooperation nowadays and ahead. First, I should stress that we are living now under the pressure of accelerating global transformations, which is not easy. And these transformations pose new global challenges for everybody, and for our countries especially. Well, I show four major transformations in my presentation, which I believe are very important for our well-being, for our positioning in the world economic system. First is the development of the crisis of neoliberal economic order and the system of institutions of global governance, international monetary and financial system. This is the crisis situation. And I think BRICS is exactly the forum which should try to find necessary solutions to go forward. No, not only for BRICS, but for the whole society. Well, the second block of transformations, to my mind, concerns geoeconomic fragmentation, politicization of the whole system of international economic relations, ideologization of trade and economic cooperation, and explosive growth of non-economic restrictions affecting trade, investment, and all the other fields of cooperation. The third block of transformations, to my mind, can be characterized as formation of a polycentric world order. However, this order is strongly opposed by Western countries, and it does not have yet any institutionalization. And this situation poses, serve as a new factor of instability, serious factor of instability. We have to think on the issues of institutionalization of our thoughts and actual processes which are needed to build a better future. Well, the third block relates to large-scale technological shifts, digitalization, the fourth industrial revolution, the change of many traditional economic paradigms like economy of scale, change of business model and production patterns. And all this situation, to my mind, seriously deteriorates the environment in which BRICS countries are developing, and increases uncertainty of global development. And the conclusion, important for BRICS, is that a very valuable tool to overcome this negative aspects, negative effects of the ongoing transformation is to intensify intra-BRICS trade and economic cooperation. And this is the subject to which is devoted our session. Then I go briefly through main characteristics of our intra-BRICS trade and economic cooperation. I focus on trade. I chose as the first indicator to measure intensity of current trade among BRICS countries, the intra-BRICS trade. Here we have the dynamics, positive dynamics in value terms and percent terms. Here we have a rising share of intra-BRICS trade in the overall intra-BRICS trade, in the overall BRICS trade, and this trend accelerated in recent years. We also have a growing share of preferential trade in intra-BRICS trade. This process is not very fast, but it is going. Many pieces of interesting information we can pick up analyzing intra-BRICS trade country profiles. But without presentation, it's difficult to comment all these features. Just a few figures. Intra-BRICS trade increases faster than the overall BRICS trade and the global trade. For example, between 2009 and 2022, BRICS trade in value terms increased by 3.3 times, while the total world trade increased only 2 times. And the share of BRICS in the overall world trade increased from 14% in 2009 to almost 90% in the early 20s. In the BRICS, and this is the question also for discussion, we have two major groups of countries which are different in terms of their trade balances in the BRICS, in intra-BRICS trade. We have three countries which have huge, large surpluses. It's Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Brazil, and we have, well, at least four countries with large negative, with large deficits in mutual trade. First of all, India, Emirates, Egypt, and South Africa. And this issue poses some difficult issues in promoting payments, intra-BRICS payments in national currencies, so we should discuss this issue. Which is important for our discussion, to my mind, is that when we measure the importance of intra-BRICS trade for various groups of countries and for various countries, we see that the new BRICS country, the new members of BRICS are much more dependent on intra-BRICS trade, or more dependent than the old BRICS countries, where we have globalized China, globalized India, in terms of trade, globalized Russia, and well, globalized Brazil, yeah, other countries.
Now the presentation is ready. You can manage your slides.
Okay.
The green forward, the red one back. So if you want some more slides, yes, passing by, then you just push the button. Okay.
Well, these are the global transformations. I said already about this. This is the major indicator to major trade intensity within BRICS. This is the graph where we see the increasing growth of intra-BRICS trade in recent years, especially in recent years. In 2023, these indicators are even more expressed. And the last column, you can see for 2022 data for including new members of BRICS. We see that intra-BRICS trade counted in the same year for only 14.5% for the old members, and if we count also the new members, we see that the share of intra-BRICS trade is almost 21%. These are the trade balances and contribution to various BRICS countries to mutual exports and mutual imports. And this is the relative importance of intra-BRICS trade for various countries. However, this technical mistake in the left part, when we speak of about exports, the first South Africa is for Emirates, should be changed for Emirates. The second South Africa should be changed for Egypt, and the last Emirates should be changed for South Africa. I'm sorry, but you see that new members are strongly more dependent on intra-BRICS trade from this graph, and we cannot. We have no choice not to say this. BRICS is now the dominating partner in Russia's foreign trade. You can see 45% of Russia's foreign trade turnover in 2023 accounted for trade with BRICS members. It is very substantial growth from the level of 2019, where you can see only 20%. I think we should at least try to measure how important is inter-BRICS preferential trade. Various members of BRICS are at different stages of developing their trade policy issues, trade policy relations within BRICS. But everybody tries. Russia is now under several negotiations with BRICS members to create free trade area. Very firm staying has Egypt. Before I made this table, I didn't not compared Egypt with other countries. It was not obvious, but Egypt is very strong in this trade policy issue. And China sticks up together BRICS through the Belt and Road Initiative. All the countries of BRICS, except Brazil and India, are members of this initiative. And the other indicator, I have two indicators to present to you, is the measure intensity of future intra-BRICS trade, intra-BRICS export potential. We use the methodology based on an International Trade Center export potential assessments, and we have some improvement of this methodology made by Russian Foreign Trade Academy, which present here. We try to use more updates to introduce methods that take into account existing sanction restrictions. Here I just described some indicators which can characterize these future trends in our mutual trade. And these are preliminary results of export potential assessments in intra-BRICS trade. They are made for the end of the 20th, say year 2029 to 30, for the midterm perspective, and counted in constant 2022 prices. And the base for this calculation is also 2022. Well, results are predictable, but important is that we all have within our association now strong export potential, and we should work on a realization of this potential through diminishing trade barriers, through creating financial mechanism, etc. In this table, you see that Iran is very much interested in developing into the BRICS trade, both in terms of potential export increase to the base here and the share of BRICS in the country's total export potential. This is, of course, not the positive, not only the positive example for cooperation with BRICS. All the other countries have substantial stimuli to cooperate within BRICS. This is just a case for member country assessment. That can be done. This can be done for any other country member of BRICS, and detailization can be very, very deep, up to 6 digits of the trade nomenclature. And this result can be used by the BRICS as a whole and by individual countries to optimize their trade flows within BRICS. We notice the growing importance in the recent years of inter-BRICS agricultural trade. Inter-BRICS agricultural trade develops much faster than the overall BRICS inter-BRICS trade. You can see it from the table. Almost 30% of the BRICS overall trade in agricultural goods is inter-BRICS trade. Taking that in mind, we see that there exist good prospects to stimulate inter-BRICS trade in agriculture which is already growing faster than other segments of trade. We see the positive effects with the creation of the intra-BRICS grain or wider agricultural exchange. There are some reasons for that, strong reasons. We see that trade in agriculture, and especially in grains, is very well balanced with the accession of five new members who are large and very large importers of food. Our Russian Grain Union, they made some calculations and found out that we produce the same quantities of grain and of different types, of major types of grain also, wheat, barley, corn, exactly the same quantities that we consume. That's a very important characteristic of the present BRICS. From this characteristic mostly stems the idea about exchange. You see, we already taken action towards this, in this direction. There is, we have the direct instruction of the President to our executive bodies to work out with BRICS partners possible mechanisms to create, first of all, grain exchange. And our delegation presented this idea on the working group of the Business Council BRICS. And this is the last slide. We see good prospects proved by statistical data for BRICS intra-BRICS trade. And we have to think more than earlier on the mechanisms to stimulate these positive processes for every member of BRICS. First of all, I should remind you that on the 1st of May, exactly 50 years ago, there was adopted on the in the UN the resolution on the establishment of the new economic order. We speak recently. We speak very often, and we all think on the future shape of the world order. In which direction should we move? What should we do with WTO, with the IMF, with the International Monetary and Financial System? But on the whole, we do not have clear vision, what steps, in which sequence we have to take. I think that this is the right time in this year, starting from this year, to think about the global importance of BRICS in shaping the future world order. And I suggest that when we work on the charter for the new global partnerships containing principles of the new world economic order, it is important, maybe very important, because when we will work on particular issues, we always, if we do not resolve more general issues, we will slow down our development. And then major cooperation issues in the field of trade facilitation, major issues, of course, only some issues on straightening mechanisms of settlement and payments within the BRICS. And the most important to my mind is the last block of issues, which concerns creation of the independent infrastructure within the framework of BRICS to support mutual trade and economic cooperation. There is there are some very important issues here: the establishment, the creation of common exchange mechanisms like grain exchange, establishment of a pool of reinsurance companies within BRICS, creation of a common reinsurance company, creation of an independent BRICS rating agency, creation of international mechanism to resolve commercial disputes within the BRICS. Trade and logistic issues is very important. We have to build and to have a kind of sovereign infrastructure for serving our intra-BRICS trade and economic relations. That's all what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrei Nikolaevich. Interesting as usual, a lot of ideas. As agreed, we can discuss that later. Now, the next on my list is Marco Alves de Mendonça from Brazil. He represents the Institute for Applied Economic Research. Go ahead, the floor is yours. You want to speak from out there? Okay.
Good afternoon. First, I apologize for not speaking Russian. And I apologize because my English is just so-so. I tried to organize my presentation. I know I have only 10 minutes, so I'll try to be very fast. But I try to organize answering the questions that are supposed to be the questions this conference wants to answer. So, but first of all, I want to tell you some information about Brazil, specific. Looking the data from 2022, you can see that Brazilian exports to the BRICS partners are almost 30% of our total exports. So BRICS is very important to Brazil. Our imports comes, the share of Brazil imports from BRICS is 28%. When you look for the first, the principal products we sell to our partners in BRICS, agricultural products are 32%. Soil is the great product. Iron ore comes with 23.5. Crude oil comes with 19%. And meat comes with 9%. If you sum out this all, we have 84%. So the exportation from Brazil is very concentrated, if you're talking about BRICS. When you look at the imports, they are very diversified, and basic chemicals and fertilizers are 21%, and so we have to thank Russia, because fertilizers come from Russia to Brazil. They are very important. Electronic components and boards have 8%. No, I don't need right now.
Not now?
No.
Okay, because I thought you forgot to
No.
Sorry.
That's just the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'll try to answer the questions that are proposed. And general purpose machines are 6.5%. So that's the importance that BRICS has to Brazil. And we are very engaged to improve this partnership. When you talk about FDI, China leads on greenfield FDI in Brazil, and also leads in the number of firms. Sometimes I ask myself, why the other countries don't give us a chance to have their companies in Brazil? Why Russia? Why you are not with us in our country? We are open for that. Okay, so now try to answering the questions that are proposed. Okay. So, global economic is in crossroads since 2008. We have slow economic growth, low productive growth, a certain deceleration global trade, decreasing appeal for the construction, global value chains, maybe a change of balance of power among the big countries that I think we can recognize there be a divide between East and West. So maybe that's because we're here. So there are rising doubts in public opinion also about the benefits of globalization. Globalization has its promises, but maybe it didn't fulfill the expectations of everybody. So economic integration is a good way to increase trade, to collaborate. Of course, we think it is, but nobody is sure right now. So the multilateral institutions are weakened, and the global governance mechanisms are failed. So do we need a new architecture? We believe we do need. So I've heard about that in other presentations, and I agree. So what BRICS can actually do in these challenging and changing environments? I think we must be more pragmatic and with more potential to bring a mutual benefits, a win-win way of seeing things. So we have to work together to reassess the benefits of economic integration and development cooperation. Maybe not only with the BRICS partners, but with everybody. So that's the first question that was supposed to be answered. What challenge do we have to improve the environments for business? I think the killer of business is protectionism. So, unfortunately, it has become a trend in the West. So we saw 4 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, it increased so much. And BRICS members should avoid this trend. We should resist and avoid trade restrictive measures. So we all know, since we were in school, that open trades boost the economy and promote development. So maybe to provide a good business environment, we should work together again and again on trade facilitation measures and avoid protectionism. And now I'm doing some kind of provocation to myself, to my country, because some recent environmental actions, and we are a great supporter to environmental actions, they are very controversial. And they, even though in person I can support this measure, they bring to us some prejudices. So the European Deflation Law, and especially the carbon border adjustment mechanisms, it's an instrument that should prejudice Brazilian agricultural sellings to everybody. So we fear what's going to come to us, and maybe we have to deal with that. So you may say, are you worried about that? Yes, because we surely want to contribute in the mitigation of climate change, the climate crisis, but we are worried about those kind of laws the Europeans are trying to impose to us. They are trying to create some methodology by themselves and impose to us. So, what is the answer? The answer is free trade. So, we have to support free trade in theory and practice, and reassert the benefits of economic integration. We have to resist protectionism. We have to resist what can divide us and try to bring together what we have in common. So we have to work together and try to understand, identify, and face the main non-tariff measures some countries, especially the rich ones, try to impose us. And maybe work on harmonization of regulations that affect trade. Always remember that we have to pay attention to the environment. So it should be good to avoid the adoption of measures that could restrict trade before discussing. You have to do it internally in your country because discussing with your partners. But discussion is open now, and we have to talk about that. So another question was how to raise opportunities on the market. And I was talking to some partners in my institute. And we think that we have promoted a greater interaction between the agents of all the countries. So, for example, in Brazil, we have APEX. It's an agent who tries to promote exports. It doesn't put any money on the companies because it doesn't have money, but it produces studies and try to show the Brazilian sellers which are the best practices they should do. I'm sure Russia has its own agents. I'm sure India has its own agents. Everybody has. Maybe those agents could talk, could work together, and develop a lot of agreements and bring information to develop as many business exchange initiatives as possible. Fairs, business meetings, and there's a point that I want to talk especially is about the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. They are very important in Brazil. They are responsible for about 96% of jobs. So the larger countries, they produce just a few jobs in Brazil. And sometimes the largest countries, they are not Brazilian. So they are not preoccupied in creating jobs. So maybe we can create opportunities for the small companies, and this should be good for Brazilian workers. So the answer for this question is cooperation. So, and now there's another controversy in Brazil. Brazil, because of Mercosur, we lack of negotiate new arrangements, but we should do. We have to agree to promote trade, and Brazil lacks in this area, unfortunately. We know that it's a complex situation, but I think there are forces that works towards this objective. Okay? So if your partners could share to us experience regarding the benefits and eventual problems they are having to sell to Brazil, to make trade with Brazilians, we are open to listen and to understand, okay? I hope everybody decides to do that. Another question was about investment projects and special economic zones. So we also know we have to negotiate new arrangements to promote direct investments. In the case of Brazil, it's crucial for development. So signing investment facilitation agreements would be a good idea. So we are always open for investments. China knows that. Russia knows that. So maybe the other partners could come. So we have to develop new instruments of cooperation and maybe use the national agencies also to do that. Maybe it's a good idea. So if we share the experience regarding the benefits and even the problems concerning foreign investment, it'd be a good idea to go ahead. So the answer is also cooperation. So we believe we can promote investment projects, and it's fundamental for development. In Brazil, we have some gaps in compliance of technical requirements, environmental. It's important to raise the quality of projects. We don't want to have a new train station if it kills the environment. But sometimes we have to accept this situation. Regarding special economic zones, we recognize that China has a longer and more successful experience. We don't have in Brazil. Perhaps it would be interesting to exchange more information about that. But it's very controversial in Brazil because it has to do about taxes, and sometimes it produces some kind of war between the different states that compose the federation. Brazil is always a federation. So it's not easy to do that. And another question is about digitalization of internal trade process. Well, Brazil has now we call governo eletrônico. It's the electronic government. Almost all the public services could be asked for today by the citizen. So when you talk about trade, we have a system called Syscomex that facilitates the possibilities to the sellers. Okay, I'm gonna finish. For the inter-BRICS digital relations, continue to organize more discussions, maybe to press the best practices, however, not trying to close the question. I'm sure no country is open to receive a complete solution coming from another country. So we have to discuss and try to sell these possibilities. So Brazil is open to study those solutions. I'm coming to the end. So each bird talking about technological solutions for supply chain transparency. This is it's very problematic for Brazil, and we believe that each BRICS member probably has its own technological solution, and we believe that different agendas probably need to mature internally. and before we try to reach a consensus between the BRICS members. It's not easy. I know China has a lot of solutions, good solutions also. And they're always trying to show us, but I think the discussion must have some evolution in Brazil before. That's it, my friend. Thank you very much. Spacito.
Thank you, Marka. Thank you. Your appeal to increase foreign direct investments in Brazil to the Russian business community will be definitely transmitted. So we have 5 more speakers on my list. If we calculate the approximate time using 10 minutes, then, and we have 2 more speakers who want to be discussants. So I kindly request all the speakers to be within the limit that we have already fixed. So next on my list is a speaker from India, Jahanvi Tripathi. And he represents, she represents a research foundation of India, Observer it is called, yes? So the floor is yours, go ahead.
Am I audible? Hello, good afternoon. And thank you for being awake for this session. And thank you, Brazil, for making a lot of tough points on our behalf in terms of where we can have national policies built first before cooperation. I think that's an important point. And I will follow your example and try to answer the questions that were presented to us by the organizers. Let's start first by understanding that the profile of economics for BRICS as well as the expanded BRICS has changed over the past decade. The India of 2004 is not the India of 2024. The China of 2004 is not the China of 2024. Our trade profiles have changed, our priorities have changed, where we as countries are investing in our own economies, where we are trying to increase capacity is different from a decade ago or a decade and a half ago. So what that does is, in this moment in history, what that does is it creates an opportunity where we can look for new complementarities rather than go back to a situation of competitiveness that we are constantly, we're used to the language of competition when in fact, I can buy something from you, you can buy something from me, we coexist. And this is reflected in the trade numbers that were presented earlier. For India, 18.96, almost 19% of our exports are to BRICS, the expanded BRICS, and about 30.4% of our imports are from the expanded BRICS. Some of this, of course, these numbers are helped by our new friends and colleagues in the BRICS system. We have an FTA with the UAE. We have investment projects and infrastructure projects going on with other partners, the port in Iran, of course, and we have new energy trade happening with Russia, as we know. So health sector initiatives with South Africa. So as you can see, there's a lot of diversity in the sectors also that we are dealing with, and every country, for India, every country is unique. Every country has its own potentialities and differences, and there's not really a need to homogenize us. We can have our own complementarities, we can have our own paths to success and economic development, and we can still coexist and work together. We don't always have to be trying to find that one right path. There is no one right path to development. We've seen that, we've experienced that over the past decade of, 2 decades of development. So I think, first of all, we should acknowledge that. Secondly, we must also acknowledge that we did experience a time of deglobalization during the pandemic and a little bit prior to that. But what that also taught us is that supply chain risk and vulnerability is something that impacts all countries equally. It's not that one country was impacted more than the other. So supply chain resilience is a collective good, I would like to put it as. It's something that we should all be investing in, and something that we should be investing in without prejudice to who we are working with. Because in the description for this session, helpfully, the discussion on reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring was happening. We don't necessarily have to go into those dynamics as well. A lot of the times, trade is, at the end of the day, transactional. We have to understand that we have our local priorities. We have our own citizens that we have to respond to. India is one of the most populous countries in the world. We have that many mouths to feed. We have that many jobs we need to create. And trade is, as you know, the mover of livelihoods, the mover of jobs in all of our countries almost. So being picky about, oh, we will trade with them and not with them is not something India has done. And we have proven that over time. So we are not prescriptive in our approach to trade, but equally we also don't take prescription in our approach to trade. We are negotiating several FTAs as we speak. The EFTA agreement was one of the few achievements we had in the past couple of months. So there's this entire spectrum, this larger world of global trade that we need to keep in mind when we discuss trade as BRICS family as well, because anytime that we lose sight or start getting narrow in our approach to trade, we are actually trying to deny a history of globalization. You know, we can't, globalization has not been all bad for us, let's be honest. It has its negatives, but it has contributed to our development and growth, and we need to acknowledge that as we move forward and try to deal with the negative consequences, so to speak, of globalization. Because as mentioned earlier, free trade is at the end of the day what is moving our growth story and what eventually led to the creation of BRICS once upon a time. As far as raising awareness and opportunities for the BRICS as national markets is concerned. On the practical front, there is something called the BRICS Trade Fair that happens. I don't know how many of us are aware of it. I think our governments can do a lot more to spread awareness about the BRICS Trade Fair, perhaps find ways to have more businesses represented in this. May or may not be mentioning this because it first started in India in 2016, but definitely something to explore. As far as SEZs are concerned, I think I share Brazil's reservations, despite India having one of the largest numbers of SEZs in at least Asia. I do want to say that, and something we tend to forget because we are so often compared to the EU, BRICS is not a common market. We are not a common trade zone. We are not a common trade system. We exist as a group of countries with similar values and similar goals, and we are working towards achieving them. But we should not lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, we are individual trading partners, and we have our own experiences. And SEZs, at the end of the day, are a domestic concept. And we, so far, don't have a common tax system. So the question of SEZs becomes controversial when we take it to that level. So that conversation, that dialogue, perhaps does have to happen. Has enough conversation happened on it? We don't know. A lot of the BRICS members are attached to each other via the BRI, CPTPP, etc. But India is, individually, India is not a member of regional trade agreements at the moment. We are doing FTAs, we are renewing BITs as we speak, the bilateral investment treaties. So SEZs as a concept at this moment in time is something we should definitely discuss, but it's not something that we can talk about with any level of confidence, because we don't know what a BRICS SEZ would look like, if it's going to be a common SEZ. If it's something about BRICS companies having better access to other BRICS country markets, that is also a matter of bilateral resolution between BRICS members. Like I said, India, UAE have an FTA. We are negotiating with Brazil as part of their regional grouping. So there are ways and means. India is also exploring how to work better with the AFCFTA, a milestone achievement for the African continent, and it has so much to do on trade facilitation, and it's something that the Indian government is constantly looking at. So we're not closing doors. We're not. I'm not starting hairs, but what I'm trying to say is that we have very individual approaches to trade, and we should not forget that as we move forward on the issue of trade cooperation. As far as digitalization of BRICS trade processes is concerned, paperless trading is an important part of trade facilitation. We continue to promote it in India. I think there are ways and means to learn from the best practices of each other's countries. We're doing our best to reduce the amount of paperwork to bring businesses to India. And I mean, I think we're doing probably okay, but I don't want to compare myself to the other countries present here at the risk of getting fact-checked later. But I would like to bring everyone's attention to an interesting fact. The NDB, not often mentioned in trade discussions, it has a general strategy for 2022 to 2026, which recognizes the importance of financing for sustainable development. Why is that important for trade? It included trade financing. Trade financing based on 3 cross-cutting considerations: climate change and disaster resilience, technology integration, and inclusiveness. When the NDB is discussing trade financing, it means we are discussing trade financing from the Global South perspective. It's the USP of the NDB, right? That it is not, it's not an entirely run by the Global North kind of bank. So when that bank is on our side and saying, let's do trade financing, let's do it on what are the majority of the BRICS countries' priorities. Climate change is a priority for us, technology integration priority for us, inclusiveness, it's a priority for us. So if the NDB is able to recognize this, we should be able to recognize this as individual countries as well. Finally, on a more practical note, I do think we should be operationalizing mechanisms that the BRICS have already agreed to. The BRICS Agreement for Cooperation on Mutual Administrative Assistance, this was related to customs. I think it's about time we looked at that again. And definitely operationalizing the BRICS platform for DPIs. It is something India feels passionately about because we have seen some success with our digital public infrastructure programs, and they are scalable programs. They are open programs, they are scalable programs, and they are transparent. So you are able to see how we came about creating these infrastructure systems, these digital infrastructure systems. And like my colleague from Brazil said, you're able to see whether it's good for you or not. We're not imposing it. We're saying, have a look, see if it works for you. If it's scalable, maybe you should do it. And on specific technological solutions, the Invest India, it is the gateway to Indian investments, as the name suggests, and it has something called a single window. And the single window, what it does is basically creates a channel across ministries in India for all of the proper channels and all of the proper authorizations that a company would need to invest in the country. This is a model that I would like to suggest that the BRICS study as something that might be scalable and useful to have in individual countries, and to maybe utilize and move forward intra-BRICS trade agenda. And in the interest of time, Chair, how am I doing? I will stop here. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the interesting discussion. I will require more information later about the single window and opportunities because a lot of business community people are interested in that. So, but we have to move forward. And the next on my list is a speaker from China, Tanya. She told me that I can call her Tanya, a Russian way, although it's Tanya. She represents a research center on BRICS. She is a deputy director, in fact, of this center from the University of International Business and Economics. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, I'm very honored to be here in this very beautiful and historic city of Moscow. And today I would like to share some of my opinions on the international trade about all the challenges. First, I would like to briefly review the recent trends and challenges of international trade, especially faced by BRICS and our emerging partners. And then I would like to give some personal suggestions for BRICS and our partners to further benefit from the new trends of international trade and secure the long-term development as the theme of our session. According to the statistics of the United Nations, the recent trend of global trade is characterized by slowdown, volatility, and heterogeneity. Firstly, regarding the slowdown and the volatility, we can observe that the rebound in global trade in 2021 began to lose momentum in the second half of 2022. This was largely due to geopolitical tensions, which increased economic uncertainty and contributed to shifts in trading patterns. As we look at 2023, global trade has entered a new phase marked by a notable decline compared to the record levels reached in 2022. In trade volumes, global trade in goods and services rebounded to approximately 28 trillion US dollars in 2021 from the lows experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, and further grew to about 32 trillion US dollars in 2022. But the value of international trade is expected to moderately decline by 3% in 2023. Specifically, the trade in goods has dropped by a significant number of 5%, whereas trade in services has grown by 8%. Turning to heterogeneity, the value of trade in goods is about equally shared between developing and developed countries. However, about 2/3 of trade in services was dominated by developed countries. The BRICS countries account for a significant share of trade in both goods and services, but unfortunately, the share of least developed partners in overall trade remains very low. Notably, the original 5 BRICS countries accounted for more than 40% of developing countries' goods and services exports. And when look at broad categories of international trade, more than half consists of manufacturing, while trade in natural resources remain crucial for our developing partners. The BRICS countries also see about 40% of exports in capital and consumer goods, but BRICS imports rely more heavily on primary goods, accounting for about 35%. Furthermore, political tensions and trade wars, like the illegal sanctions imposed on Russia by United States, and also like the trade wars between United States and China, have significantly heightened the uncertainty surrounding international trade. Notably that earlier this month, United States again imposed steep tariff increases on an array of Chinese imports, including electric vehicle batteries, computer chips, and medical products. I think we should recognize that such measures have not only disrupted the established trade flows, but also caused uncertainties among global economic sectors, further hindering the prospects for international trade cooperation. And this growing unpredictability undermines the stability needed for robust economic interactions and collaborative growth. And accounting for all these trends, I think there are several potential challenges for the international trade of BRICS and also our developing partners. And I would like to list some of here. Okay, first, one concern is that, the emerging markets and developing countries may face reduced market access. Increasing tariffs and trade barriers may limit our access to key markets, reducing our export opportunities. And the rise in protectionist policies in developed countries, as mentioned before by Professor Mendoza, that may make it harder for us to compete in global markets. As countries turn inward and form regional trade blocs, some our developing partners may find themselves excluded from key trading groupings, leading to trade diversions. Second, I am worried that developing countries may have less access to technology and knowledge at the current situation. With the measures taken by some of the developed countries, transfer of technology and knowledge across borders is slowing down, limiting developing countries' access to advanced technologies and expertise. And the decrease in international collaboration may lead to a slowdown in innovation and technological advancement in BRICS and other countries. Third, I think developing countries that are integrated to global supply chains may face some significant disruptions. If this supply chain becomes fragmented in the current situation, with the fragmentation of all these supply chains, costs of importing raw materials, intermediate goods, and any other inputs may increase, making local production more expensive and less competitive. Okay, this seems some pessimistic, but in contrast to broader and uncertain trends of global trade, the BRICS countries have played a crucial role in supporting and promoting international trade today. Our efforts like signing free trade agreements, establishing common standards for products, optimizing business methods, and removing barriers to market may effectively increase the trade volume of the BRICS countries and our partners. And now I would like to propose some suggestions for BRICS countries to adapt to all these changes in international trade flows and develop flexible and resilient supply chains. First, I think BRICS could invest more in technology and digitalization to facilitate trade. For example, we can use blockchains for transport and secure tracking of goods through the supply chain. And I can find these practices has already been adopted in many countries such as India, such as China. And this can improve the accountability and traceability of the transportation and the trade. And we can leverage AI and machine learning to predict disruptions, optimize routes, and manage demand and supply more effectively. Second, we can enhance supply chain visibility also by using technologies such as Internet of Things devices for real-time tracking of shipments. Also monitor the environmental conditions and ensuring product integrity. Third, I think we could also integrate more sustainable practices such as reducing carbon footprint, waste management, and efficient resources use. And we could take measures to improve supply chains to withstand climate-related disruptions, such as extreme weather events and changing environmental regulations. And to also promote the sustainable growth in international trade of more countries of Global South and Global East, I would like to also propose some suggestions. First, we could invest in improving our trade infrastructures to reduce costs and streamline customs procedures, implementing technology-driven solutions like digital customs clearances can significantly enhance efficiency of trade in developing countries. Second, some developing partners could diversify their export products and explore new markets, especially among developing and emerging partners. Developing countries can also reduce dependence on a single export sector or market, thereby mitigating risk associated with global economic fluctuations and with all these political tensions. Thirdly, I think developing partners could also focus on building economic resilience by enhancing cooperation among themselves, which can include sharing best practices, technology transfers, and collective negotiations in trade deals. This is what we are doing now. And furthermore, of course, developing countries could actively engage with BRICS through various platforms and summits to attract investment and forge stronger economic ties, which I think would lead to increased trade flows and economic growth. This is all my sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next on my list is Ronnie Nkwadi from South Africa. He's a professor from Nelson Mandela University. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say some of the ideas, some of them have been shared already with the speakers before me, and I'll just quickly go through my thoughts on this topic. The theme is about international trade and long-term growth, which suggests to me that we are saying to ourselves, how can we use trade in order to realize sustainable long-term growth? Now, in saying that, we need to take cognizance of the fact that growth is subjected to a number of shocks where you experience both positive and negative output gaps. And how then, as BRICS countries respond to these shocks that often take place in the global space, especially when we talk about international trade. Findings suggest that the shocks that takes place amongst the BRICS countries, including the BRICS Plus, are not synchronized, and that, in fact, compromises BRICS economies from becoming an optimum currency area. So in the days of globalization, where we are faced with global competitiveness, how do we then ensure that international trade is successful amongst the BRICS countries? We talk about technological innovations such as telecommunications and internet. All these have revolutionized the way goods and services are traded. So the role of technology is very important in ensuring that we optimize our trade. These technological advancements have enabled firms to streamline processes, enhance efficiency, and mitigate risks, thereby unlocking the new opportunities for growth and competitiveness. And one of the key ways technology facilitates trade optimization is by reducing transaction cost and increasing operational efficiency through automation and digitalization. So automation technologies such as robotic process automation and artificial intelligence, these all enable businesses to automate repetitive tasks, improve accuracy, and also accelerate decision-making processes. So the challenges that's faced, remember that international trade is driven mainly by the businesses. What are the challenges? I'm talking about this from a South African perspective. The trade wars and also unfair competition. Now, in South Africa, we have a number of small businesses that are growing, youth entrepreneurship and so forth. And these upcoming businesses face these unfair competition. And of course, the trade wars also does affect how these businesses operate, because some of them are not really ready for global exposure. Now, also another challenge that businesses are facing is worsening of international economic relations, sanctions, and many other things that's taking place in the space. Also, lack of access to loans for private entities where there is no sufficient funds to start a business. I often say to my students that those that study entrepreneurship, when they finish and walk across the stage, that's not sufficient, because the student then experiences what we call culture shock, because then they have to meet the real world in starting that business. There's insufficient government support to start new industries and, of course, new technologies. We need to see tax relief for manufactured export goods, because these goods that are sometimes exported, especially from developing countries, are mainly primary products, which we need to ensure that we process these goods and export manufactured goods. So how do we then strengthen trade in BRICS? Because we talk about trade for long-term sustainable growth, we need to strengthen the BRICS cooperation, as speakers before me have said the same thing. We ensure that we strengthen that. We need to balance trade relations. What is that? We need to avoid a situation of winners and losers, because remember, in international trade, it's easy to lose, easy to win, but that's also based on the currency, which I'll talk about the next session. We need to have better access to loans for the private sector, because we cannot crowd out the private sector. They play an important role to ensure that we are having a successful trade, and also government grants and so forth to help to develop these new businesses, especially youth-owned enterprises, women-led enterprises, very important, who don't have a start-up capital. Tax relief in strategic sectors, where we know that these businesses promote trade, especially exports. We need to ensure that we also consider tax relief. Enhance digital trade, digital finance, including use of local currencies to facilitate trade. It's very important. How do we enhance intra-BRICS trade, where we become partners, where our countries serve as market for each other? Who are our trading partners as we speak? So we need to look at that and see how we can change things around and ensure that we become trading partners to one another. Enhance as well the flow of foreign direct investment, as well as portfolio investment. Very important to ensure that we grow our economies. How do we raise awareness of business opportunities in BRICS? We need to facilitate trade agreements and partnerships among members. We need to coordinate trade policies. We need to experience technology transfer and innovation. Very important that we share these ideas. Platforms like these help us to share the ideas. Investment funding to support small and medium enterprises. What about cultural exchange and business networking, including creative industries, right? It's important that we do that. And also to build a platform for advocacy, and also we build resilience through diversity. So also the cooperation in the field of investment projects, also SEZs, We heard earlier on that China is really doing good in this. So we need effective governance, ensure infrastructure development is there, investment incentives, because people ask, why must I come and invest on your ground or in your country? We need to create that investment incentives. Simplified regulations. We need to build a skilled workforce, because that's our labor supply. Private sector involvement, we cannot overemphasize the importance of the private sector in ensuring that we've got successful trade. Transfer of skills is very important. Also investment in renewable energy sources, because energy is one of the sources to ensure that we have a sustainable growth. When it comes to issues of digital trade is very important. We need to have digital trade facilitation, reduce paperwork, enable electronic exchange trade-related data, digital customs systems, very important, automating customs procedures, reduce clearance times, improve ports efficiency for those that trade using sea transport. Online trade via digital payment system is also equally important in this case. So also the technological solutions for supply chain, like blockchain technology is very important. Internet of Things to monitor and track goods in real time, use of tags to track goods, leverage cloud-based platforms. We need artificial intelligence to analyze data, smart contracts, and automate and secure transactions and ensure compliance. Use digital certificates to ensure authenticity as we guard also against cyber crime. So I want to conclude by just putting these summary and recommendations forward. One, we need to streamline regulations and reduce bureaucratic red tape, enhance legal frameworks to ensure consistent enforcement, invest in infrastructure development, improve access to finance, strengthen anti-corruption measures and governance framework, reduce trade barriers, and promote open markets. And of course, focus on education and vocational training to bridge the skills gap. And also, we need to continue developing a unified digital platform that's all by sharing information, standardized electronic documentation, implement blockchain technology, enhance digital infrastructure to support high-speed internet and connectivity, promote digital literacy, training for businesses, and also encourage the adoption of e-commerce and digital payment systems, streamline custom procedures through digital solutions. So that is the end of my talk. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next on my list is Mahdi Fakhridi. He is a professor from the School of International Relations from Iran. You're welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As a newcomer to the club, we thought that a group of important developing countries will strike a balance between geopolitical and geoeconomical issues. And I'm getting the impression that geopolitics is still more important here in BRICS than geoeconomics. And by that, I would like to make reference to what was already mentioned before, that we are facing two sets of challenges in BRICS. One derived from the multilateral trading system, where countries who had been advocating for free trade and trade liberalization now have changed mind and have become more protective and more restrictive. And BRICS could be a place to face this problem, since most of the BRICS countries are important trading countries and know how to remedy the challenges created by the weakness or debilitated multilateral system. And that is where we can start our policy making, because if a group of countries come together with their own peculiarities and with their own diversified economies, I think the main idea could be the issue of trade creation and trade diversion. So we need to create more trade amongst ourselves, BRICS countries, and try to absorb as much as possible the trade with other countries to BRICS network of countries and business communities. The second issue that I see as a challenge is that most of BRICS countries are commodity-based economies and commodity exporters. So it makes us more fragile and subject to market fluctuation and volatilities. Therefore, we need to see as well how we could diversify our economies. That is a long-term project, but to see how we can deal or adopt new policies on market fluctuations and see what could be the best policies to see that. This takes me to a third point, which is a challenge for BRICS, that's referring again to trade creation and trade diversion. It is expected to have some sort of agreement in trade sector amongst BRICS countries. All BRICS countries are WTO members. They have developed their trading system bilaterally, regionally, or multilaterally. We have countries like China, Russia, India, who have been working seriously to, let's say, influence trade decisions at multilateral levels. So everybody knows the lesson, and everybody knows how different means and mechanisms could be used to touch upon the trade interest of the BRICS countries. But surprisingly, we still don't have any sort of trade agreement amongst us. Countries bilaterally have developed their network of PTAs and FTAs and will continue to do so. But I think there should be some sort of agreement amongst our member countries to start create business, to start create trade amongst us, because if, as I mentioned, we have influential role players at multilateral level, we need to take advantage of this comparative advantage. If India, China, Brazil, South Africa, Russia have played their role at global level, they can replicate it easily inside the BRICS and also assist the newcomers to become more, let's say, integrated in the system and try to increase the level. So I think the starting point could be a preferential trade agreement with the aim or objective of maybe becoming a free trade agreement in the mid-term or long term. The other issue, other challenge, I think, is the institutional integration which need to be done within the group, because the newcomers might have some sort of adaptation at institutional level, and then we need to also deal with other international organizations which might have sometimes different or even contradictory regulations that need to be touched and thought in the BRICS group. Now, the serious challenge, at least for us, for Iran, is the issue of sanctions. I personally have lived almost 2/3 of my life under sanctions. So the question is that if we are talking of an inclusive trade system, restrictive measures need to be thought about. And in the past 4 or 5 years, we have also seen that these restrictive measures have not been restricted only to unilateral sanctions, but they are being expanded by nature and by deep, because now they are extraterritorial sanctions, forcing companies and other countries to follow suit what decisions are being taken in Washington or even in Brussels. Now, trade wars, as it was referred before, or technological wars are also serious challenges for BRICS countries, because at any stage we might be affected by these unilateral decisions. We were sometimes thinking that US administration have become addicted to sanctions. But now we realize that more than addiction, it's a source of pressure, a source of income, and a source of, let's say, intimidating other countries, not only on economic issues, but also in political aspects. So this takes me to the point that maybe we need to think a mechanism and proper means to face this problem, because almost half of BRICS countries have been or are subject to unilateral sanctions, and as trade remedies, we need to take this issue seriously and think about proper mechanisms to face it. Now, on business opportunities, I could say that although we have a business council, but we need to involve more proactively the business community. The inclusion of our national chambers or even associations in the talks on business opportunities could be a first step, because businesses seek their own benefits and profits and know very well the mechanisms, how to profit from the new, let's say, environment. So their involvement, from one hand, promote our people-to-people or civil society to civil society context, which is a fact needed in the BRICS, but at the same time could create, environment, friendly environment to promote trade amongst our countries. The second issue on these business opportunities could be the government, because we know 15% of the global trade are being done through governments. So government procurement is important in businesses. So tenders and other projects, investment projects, could be exchanged through a network which could be established later on amongst member countries. And I think there were some references on the issue that how the governments could create single window in order to exchange opportunities and inform properly the projects. Now, the other business solution could be use of software, as our Brazilian colleague made reference to, and I know there are similar softwares and platforms in China and India, and that could be also used and expanded to the other countries. The use of real and virtual B2B or B2C platforms, I think, could be a good help, and maybe sometimes we can reach to the creation of a BRICS Baba, like Alibaba, where information is exchanged amongst the governments, amongst the businesses, and amongst the consumers, and that could be the help for other countries and other sectors of the economy to benefit from. On the foreign direct investment, I think we need BRICS regulation on the absorption of foreign direct investment. Since there are sometimes different mechanisms, different regulations on the foreign investment, so a coordinated policy on this issue is needed. It could be somehow maybe similar to the trade-related investment measures agreement in WTO, but it could be also something different, touching the same points, but taking and adopting different policies and on the issue. And the other subject on this FDI and SEZs could be also the possibility of exchanging information on investment projects amongst BRICS countries, and even see the possibility of having BRICS SEZs in different member countries. That could help the developing countries to become acquainted with more developed countries in the group, and that makes me remember the agreement in Monterrey Consensus. It was related to funding development, which is not the main purpose here. But that is a mechanism that could also help newcomers to benefit from it, while more developed countries in the group have done so and have profited from that. I think we could think of development assistance for member countries as well as trade aid, because if we agree that trade is an engine to development, then we need to facilitate trade. And one of the ways to do it is to establish some sort of agreement which market access is offered to other members. And instead of increasing our bilateral trade with other partners of BRICS, I think we need to act as a group and increase and establish mechanisms to increase trade amongst us as a group, and try to find means and mechanisms of doing so. The last point I would say is that to see how we can also think of BRICS supply chains that could enable us to become more competitive at international level, and that would not be possible without having BRICS transnational corporations. This, I think, could help us and sometimes push us to become more creative and more innovative in our trade policies and our trade behavior. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Last but not least on my list is Alan Freeman from Canada. He is a co-director of Geopolitical Economy Research Group at the University of Manitoba, and Secretary of Geopolitical Economy Research and Education Trust, and as well as co-editor of Geopolitical Economy book series from Manchester University Press. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I will need my slides, so I should signal to the... here we go.
The slides are there.
I want to thank you all for the honor and privilege of speaking to you today. One small correction of a sort, which is, although I have been in Canada for 15 years, I and Radhika Desai, my wife and partner, have now moved back to the UK. So now I have a competitive advantage. I have two countries I can be ashamed of. And I want to share a very simple idea that in the shape of the colonial order that we are now leaving, the control of knowledge is as central as the control of money. And therefore, it's important, and I urge this as something for the consideration of everybody, to redefine the present concept of intellectual property. And that, I think, is as important as replacing a dollar-denominated system. If you own knowledge, you control production. But if you own production, you control life. And I'm going to use trade to talk about this. Now, in 1995, when the WTO went through the dramatic evolution that led to the unipolar moment, so-called, there was formed a new organization. It wasn't actually new. It was the World Intellectual Property Organization. It was just a talking shop formed in 1970. It became a multilateral, that is, rules-based organization in 1995. And central to this, not very well known, was a lobby which was in the US called the Super 301 lobby. So it implemented internationally a piece of domestic US legislation. And this legislation was the first time, to my knowledge, that the systematic use of sanctions for the control of trade was introduced. And it took the following form. The Super 301 lobby asked Congress to draw up a list of all countries which were discriminating against products in which US firms had intellectual property, and to implement sanctions against them. Now, a very interesting thing about this is basically they want to take technological and creative products, ideas and creative products, which I call mental objects. They wanted to make them into world commodities, the same across the whole world. And this will be tradable on such a basis that no person and no country can use an idea without the consent of its owner. That was the purpose of it. And this was written into WIPO. So it's a piece of US legislation became WIPO. The kind of consequence, if you think about it, that we've had is, for example, you think about generic drugs and the battle there has been over the right to use generic drugs. That was an IP battle. If you think about the trade war that the United States has been waging on the technology, on technological field on China, this is all about IP. It's about different concepts of IP of the US and China, which I will come on to. So I think if you think back to the history of your own country, you will all realize that the control of knowledge has played a big part in preventing you developing your countries. Now, to explain this point, I'm going to talk about what's actually going on in the production and trade of modern economies. And this graph on the left is very important. It shows the proportion of jobs in industry in each of the G7 countries. So industry is anything that builds material things: construction, manufacturing, agriculture, mineral extraction. That's all industry. Only 20% of the workforce of the United States is now engaged in producing things. That doesn't mean they're producing less things. It means that they are so productive that they only need 20% of the workforce to produce those things. There are advantages and disadvantages to this, but it's a long historical trend, and it's not going to stop. What that has been replaced with is services. So 80% of the labor of the advanced world, between 70 and 80%, is producing something about which economists know nothing, which gives you pause to thought. Let me now turn to whether that applies only in the so-called developed countries or across the world. And what you can see is a very interesting set of trends in the rest of the world. The next charts, they show the major BRICS countries, but I have included South Korea as an interesting comparator. You can see that services, that's the left-hand chart, have been growing in all these countries, but they fall into two quite distinct groups. In South Korea, the Russian Federation, and Brazil, services production are actually reaching the levels of the developed, so-called developed world. But in the others, it's climbing, but starting from a much lower level. And so what you see is that if you look at the central chart, industrial production has been growing, but around 2012, that stopped. So that now there is a declining trend in industry, and what is actually happening is industrialization. The third chart shows agriculture. So what was going on was the replacement of agriculture with industry. Again, a very fundamental trend in the world, and therefore we have a differential trend up until 2012. Now we have an absolute trend. Across the whole world, the production of services is replacing the production of goods in labor, not, of course, in quantities traded. And I'm going to come on down to quantities traded. So the next chart, which I hope I can get to, shows the proportion of service trade. And we see a very different trend. First of all, this shows the developing economies excluding China, the BRICS, and the developed economies. First of all, the level of trade in services of the global north, or the global minority, or whatever you want to call it, is twice as high as all of the rest. Secondly, there are economies that are catching up. The developing economies, excluding China, are actually catching up. The BRIC is not. BRICS are static. That may be a good thing. I'm going to come on to that. It's not necessarily something that's bad, but it's worth noting the absolute difference in the trade structure of the developed global majority and the global minority. So how are we to understand this? Well, the first thing we have to do is understand why people produce material goods, but produce services but trade in goods. Economists can explain it. It's because there are economies of scale within the country in the production of material, in the production of services, which are not realized in the production of material goods. Services are quite uniform across the world. Financial services are financial services everywhere, right? Knowledge is knowledge everywhere. So there's no differentiation of products. And so the fact that there is a high or low proportion of trade in services is not necessarily either good nor bad. The second thing is we have to dig deeper into what services actually consist of. Now, this is a very outdated term. It actually dates from feudalism. It's in the English language, I don't know about other languages, the term service is derived from servitude or serf. So we are dealing with the most modern phenomenon in the entire world with the oldest economic concept in the entire world. This, I suggest, is a problem. Now, what's happened to the term services is it's become what in English we call a syncretic mix. It mixes together things which don't really belong together. For example, it includes transport, it includes travel, it includes communications. But these are not really in the services in the sense of a direct relation between humans, which is what the original feudal concept of services meant. And I would argue that, in fact, transport and travel, which account for about 30% of service trade, I don't know about production, actually, are actually a form of production. I mean, they're changing the material circumstances of the person or the goods. Okay, so I want to distinguish what I call mental service production from material service production. And what we find is that the category of mental service production contains most of the activities on which the global north uses, on which its hegemony rests. Financial services are a large and growing part of it. So, which is why I say it's not necessarily a healthy thing that that's growing. Intellectual property and trade in technology rights is a major part of it. So I think that this, and if we go on to the next service, oh, sorry, it's gone backwards, which is rather classic. If you take mental services as the production of total, which includes these categories like financial services, also services like health and education. If you want to accept your education from my countries, then you're very welcome to, but I would suggest you may be ill-advised. But anyway, export of education is actually a part of it. But you can see now there's and here I only have, unfortunately, statistics, which I took from UNCTAD, from the LDCs. But actually, the LDCs demonstrate the point I'm making even more clearly, because these mental services, as a proportion of total services, are growing in the north and declining in the LDCs, which forces them back to this role of being exporters of primary products and commodities, which is what, in a certain sense, is what has to be escaped from. So what do I think we should do? We should, I would urge that we actually need a new IP framework. We need a new legal framework. And that will deal with the issue of sanctions, because many of the sanctions are derived from essentially the trade war desire to prevent the rest of the world, the global majority, using the technology that I would stress the North has not made. It owns it, but it didn't make it. If you find out how to make a drug by going and talking to the elders of an indigenous community in the rainforest, you didn't make that drug, but you own it, and you can stop everybody else using it. It's actually very interesting, because I can agree with much of what the speakers say about freedom of trade being very important. But actually, as von Mises, of all people, pointed out, the founder of neoliberal economics, if you look at the von Mises Institute, they will tell you that intellectual property is a restraint on trade. It's the only form of commodity, knowledge, that you are not allowed to trade. It prevents you trading it. So this is a very restrictive form of ownership. And the reason is because mental products are, technology, ideas, songs, poetry are essentially shareable. Economists say they're not excludable. Just because you use a technology doesn't stop me using it, unless you put in place a legislative framework that stops people using what is actually potentially capable of being shared by everybody. So it's a restraint on sharing. So I think the BRICS can do better. They could pioneer, and the whole world would benefit. There's, in my opinion, I'm very involved in policy debates about the economic policy that the US should follow if it enters a proper constructive relationship with Russia, China, and the BRICS. Okay, well, one of the things you have to say is how do you yield the benefits of trading instead of trying to stop people, who you see as your competitors by holding them back. So the WIPO definition seeks to reverse the natural characteristic of mental objects by putting them into a legal framework that constrains them. And I might summarize this to finish in a sort of poetic way, which is that the raw materials that produce food are sunshine and sweat. Diamonds are made with blood. Weapons are made with tears. But ideas are made with courage, and songs are made with love. And you cannot put courage in chains, and you cannot put love in a cage. So what we must do is build a world which is high enough for courage and wide enough for love. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, but we have still 2 more discussants registered for this session. So, Alexander Daniltsov, or maybe Benoît, you okay. Then first I have the pleasure to introduce to you, go to this, you want from the place, okay. Ali Benoît from Algeria, who used to be a Minister of Treasury, in the years 1999-92. Then he was an expert of National Debt Committee, so he knows a lot about trade, about debt, about treasuries. And nowadays, he is an advisor to the ministers of finance and economy in Algeria. And he is a very bright guy. I listened to him many times in the past, and he was always excellent. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for your kind words, Vladimir. Thank you for all of you. Very interesting comments, subjects. And I particularly appreciated the speech of our Iranian friend, not only because he is brighter than you, no, not at all. No, because he expressed the experience of his country. He said, I have spent more than 2/3 of my life under sanctions. That is very strong, but from the positive aspect of the issue, that means that Iran is, has a huge experience of anti-sanctions policy, how to survive in the regime of sanctions. Welcome to you, and I hope my country, Algeria, will join soon your group. And anyway, among the various interesting things which have been presented, there is one idea which has been exposed by Andrei Spartak, and particularly, and the Indian lady. The question of digital infrastructure is, by nature, in my opinion, very important to develop the intra-BRICS trade business. I am just wondering whether we can also develop, set up laws concerning a preference given to the BRICS countries for investments in the BRICS area countries, financing and so, but mainly tenders for infrastructures, which is quick. It's in the hands of the governments. I mean, the governments are, because the question, one of the questions raised is how to quickly develop intra-trade business. And so I concretely, pragmatically, as Mr. Fakhri said, yes, there are many things which can be done quickly, and provided that it does not hurt the engagements and commitments already taken by the governments vis-à-vis the, let's say, WTO or accord d'association between the South Mediterranean countries and Europe, and so and so. But it is an idea which merits to be. The digital currency, I really hope that someone came to explain us what the BRICS are doing vis-à-vis the common currency. Strangely, I am not a member, my country is not a member of the BRICS, but it seems that I am only questioned I am, by this issue, despite the fact that it's the most important issue, in my opinion, the common currency, which in my sense, I will have opportunity to talk about this in 1 hour, because I intervene as a speaker on this. So I have been particularly, my attention was drawn on this bridge, BRICS bridge. Also, I studied the M bridge, how it works between the 4 countries involved, how BRICS could take profit from the experience of the M bridge, how the BRICS bridge is working. It's a project, but nobody came and say how we can see this is what we are intending to deal with this digital currency. And just to be concrete, to always pragmatic and concrete, after having reviewed this project, I saw two weaknesses or weak points. This project will lead to losses when you use these central bank digital currencies in settling intra-trade between two countries of BRICS. If one of them will not accept a currency, the use of a third currency will be, of course, necessary. And when you use a third currency, you lose money, cross rates, through the cross rates. I mean, if you use double conversion. So my opinion is, if we use one basket which contains the currencies, for example, of the BRICS, then the transaction will be done in this currency unit, and given that each BRICS currency has a rate, it will facilitate. I mean, the other weak points is that is related to the stability of the currency we use, but also I will not take your time for this, because I will talk about this in 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last one from the discussants, Alexander Daniltsev, who is the director of the Institute for Trade Policy within the University, High School of Economics, within our university.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for opportunity to participate in this discussion. Well, I am in a very difficult situation because so much interesting and important information we have here. I will try to be short and maybe I try just to mention some points. We very much spoke today about some challenges within BRICS, and one of the challenges is the intra-trade, BRICS intra-trade, mutual trade. Yes, indeed, our countries are more successful in trade with the world than between each other. But, I think it is not of course, it is a challenge and a problem, but it is not just a bad thing, because, we must remember that in spite of the dimensions of the country and economies, all of our countries are global trade nations. All of them have some global specialization. And, we must remember about it and think about our general influence in the global economy and global trade. I am not just some advocate of expansion, but our countries are all export-oriented countries. And we are of vital interest in stable, predictable and smooth development of world trade. And it is some difference from, some countries, I will not just pinpoint them, but we cannot avoid trade wars and some just disturbances in the world trade. We are all interested in stability, and I think it is the main, our common point in global system. It's the first. The second, what is necessary somehow to develop our trade, mutual trade and global trade? A very important thing is, it was mentioned here, services. Services which support trade, because unfortunately, much part of this sector is under control of companies which have a monopoly power. And we must create our own infrastructure suitable for our trade peculiarities, and well, just develop cooperation in this area, not only between governments, but between business associations, companies, exporters, importers, well, just business community. It is very important, I think. Well, another problem, well, some, for example, instruments to facilitate trade. Yes, cooperations of customs services and so on are very important, is very important, but well, in some cases, indeed, the liberalization of trade is difficult and long projects usually. But what I think we need to do, the answer is cooperation in investment. I think it is very, very important, and I would like to support this idea. I think our colleagues from Brazil and many other participants and our colleagues expressed this idea. Because, well, investment is just the best friend of trade, so that let us develop it. Another point, well, I think, well, we discussed, for example, digital platforms and other innovation. Well, but I think it is very important somehow to provide for the compatibility of our technological level within BRICS. It is very, very important because it is the basement for real economic and technical cooperation. Well, another point is education. I think it is very, very important because we need somehow cooperate in this area to let our experts, business, well, just people to speak one language. I mean mentally, just in, of course, in area of economics, business, trade, and so on. It is very, very important. Again, I will repeat because it is the well, again, an element of the basement for our further and deep cooperation. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have to ask if there are some urgent questions without which people won't be able to sleep overnight. If not, I don't see any raised hands. So thank you very much, the speakers. Thank you very much, the audience. I think that was very interesting. And we continue our debates. That's not the last point. We will continue our debates during the remaining time of the academic forum. Thank you, everybody.